So, good evening, everybody. My name is Kim Macleod from Indie Authors World, and I had the absolute pleasure of getting to know Alison and helping her to get her book finished and out on sale. Here we are, and we're delighted that tonight we're going to be talking to her about the journey of wilding women, celebrating selfhood, and finding out all the wonderful things about this wonderful lady. So a couple of things just to kind of get started. Could everybody mute your mics, please? If it's really just because often what happens is we get some background noise. We will be asking you later on in the end of the evening to unmute yourselves and give Alison a big cheer, which will be a huge racket. That's a Scottish word for those who are not here, a very loud noise when we actually do want to celebrate everybody together with her towards the end of the evening. The aim is that we'll be on the call for around about an hour, and then after the formal event has finished, we will be leaving the call open because I know there's a lot of you here who are friends, so there'll be a chance just to chat and have a little informal chit chat with Alison and each other for another sort of half hour or so if anybody wants to stay. So
I do hope that most of you will, because it's been lovely to see you.
So we've got this unusual situation where we have so many people from lots of different places around the world joining us tonight, lots of different time zones. We're here in Scotland. I'm actually on the West Coast over in Largs, and Alison is in the East Coast over in Edinburgh. And with the power of this wonder of technology, we can talk with everybody all around the world and bring together a wonderful community. So first of all, can I say, congratulations, Alison, and welcome to your celebratory event for the launch of this fabulous book. Here we have A Journey of Wilding Women, Celebrating Selfhood, and I don't have to make myself small anymore. So how does it feel, first of all, just to get this book out?
Oh, it feels absolutely amazing. At first it felt I went through about a week of what I would call a kind almost like postnatal depression. All the effort and the wonderful, all the energy of getting the book out. And then there it was in my hands, and I thought, oh dear, is this mine? But by the time I'd gone through it and read it again, and I thought, this is good. This is worth putting out into the world. And yes, it felt wonderful getting it out. So yes, I too have my
product placement, folk. That's it. We're just going to be going. Yeah. Marvelous.
yeah.
So what I'd like to do, just to kind of kickstart, is read the blurb from the back of the book and a little bit about this, a little section that's in the start that really kind of like that I love, and then we're going to start talking about some of your journey then towards this book. So we have celebrating selfhood. Do you remember the moment you glimpsed the life you were meant to embrace? The dazzling burst of hope and freedom through the cracks of your conditioning and limitations. That moment when you see something about your life, your situation, another person, and it can never be unseen. That is the wilding moment, when life shifts and changes forever. This is the story of how one woman found her own wilding on a quest in the high desert of New Mexico. It is the story of how she shared that moment with women across the world, and how those women discovered their own wilding moments, writing and sharing their stories, meeting up online, growing themselves and each other. And it's a rich set of very practical wilding tools, practices and ideas. I don't have to make myself small anymore. And we're delighted that there's so many of you who've been part of that community joining us this evening, or this morning, or later on this evening, depending on which part of the world that you happen to be in. And what you can do as we're going through the interview tonight, if you want to post a question yourself, then the chat facility should be open, and you can ask a question in the chat box, and we will just keep a little eye on anything. So if you've got a question that you'd like to ask, by all means, you can put a note up in there. And the other thing, the little bit that I wanted to read was just the kind of a little bit of the start of the book here, which was, here I am, a woman in my mid-70s, a mother of 3, grandmother of 8, my own 3, plus honorary grandmother to my partner's 5 times married, but that's another story, living with Parkinson's disease, completely alone in the high desert of New Mexico on a vision quest. I'm spending 5 days and nights in solitude and reflection, guided by my teacher, living outside with the temperature below freezing at night and up to the 70s during the day. My friends tell me, somewhat enviously, that I'm crazy, and they could be right. I think when I just read that, Alison, I was absolutely bowled over and definitely wanted to know more about this wonderful woman that I've got beside me tonight. So Alison, why on earth did you really want to sort of like go, that idea of getting out into the wilderness for 5 days and nights? Where did that emerge from?
Well, it goes back to 1999 when Wind Eagle and Rainbow Hawk came to Edinburgh, and through, I can't remember how many different people, but I found out about what they were doing, and people said, oh, you've got to come and see these folks, they're extraordinary. And sure enough, they were extraordinary. They ran a ceremony called the Star Maiden Wheel. And one of the questions in the ceremony was, what is my dream of myself? Mm. And that just drew me into this extraordinary way of thinking, of being, of living with ceremonies. And when, you know that little voice that you have in your head? I have a little voice that tells me things, and if I ignore it, then I get into terrible trouble. But over the years, I've learned to listen to it. And this little voice said to me back in 2019, you've got to go on a vision quest. And David, my lovely man David, who's just down on the screen there, had had been on vision quests before, and I'd been on one some years back. But the little voice said, you've got to get onto this vision quest, and it's got to be now. And it absolutely had to be, because that after I got back, then within a month or two, it was lockdown. So the land in New Mexico is extraordinary. It's very close to the Ghost Ranch, where Georgia O'Keeffe did all her extraordinary paintings. And it was almost like it was calling me again and saying, come on, time you came back. There's things to do. So I just got myself organized, and there wasn't any space on the vision quest, but somehow or another, Wind Eagle made sure that I could go, which was just magical.
So listening to that little voice that we all have, but so often we find a reason not to listen to it, don't we?
Mm. Oh yes, it's far too easy to ignore it and just say, oh, shut up, you don't really mean that. Mm-hmm. But yep. Every time I've not listened to it, then things have gone wrong. So yeah. Sometimes disastrously, and sometimes just a small amount, but it has to be listened to.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you did. And we're so glad that you get to go there, because like you said, we didn't know that COVID was coming, and suddenly we were going to be shut down and locked away for such a long time. that also then allowed you to have the space then to develop and write and reflect, I suppose, on what the experience had been.
Yes, and the extraordinary thing about lockdown was that it actually opened up my connections. So there are people here that I'm looking at and smiling at now who I'd never met and still haven't met, but I met them through things that happened on the internet. There was a wonderful thing called 159, which Sue Young and Karen were on. And it was a long distance video. I don't know how you would describe it, run by Unmeyan from Seoul. And she's a dance and a performance teacher. And she invited us all to make our own videos, 1 minute, 59 seconds, because that's the average length of time that anybody ever watches a YouTube thing before flicking on to the next one. So we had 6 weeks of online dance, online adventures, and it was just wonderful to meet up with people from across the world that I would never otherwise have seen.
Yeah.
So lockdown gave me the time and the space to reflect and to write. And it also, at the same time, opened up my world hugely. So it's a lovely paradox there.
So can we go to the experience then of this magic? I mean, that's what I think. I can think just about it's a magical experience of being on your vision quest. But when you were going and you decided to listen to that voice and pack up and take everything across to New Mexico, did you have something that you hoped would happen? Did you have something that you would hope that you would experience?
No. I just knew that I had to go. I knew that I wanted to explore myself and what, how things were developing with me. But the thing about working with the teachers is expect the unexpected. It's wonderful. I never knew or never know what exactly what's going to happen next. And because of that, then wonderful things can happen. If I know exactly what I want, then I tend to, that sort of closes things down. Mm-hmm. But I knew that I wanted to just open things up and see what came through.
And that's an opportunity, I think, for a lot of us, just to let that be open, to what might come. And it's so great that you've had guides and teachers who've helped perhaps encourage you over the years. You've talked about your relationship with your guides and how they've supported you. So that must have been just a really exciting opportunity to delve into what would unfold then for you in the desert.
Yes, and it was also extremely hard work because it's dusty. It's the sand. There's I ended up with the way that the sand just got into my hair. I had my hat crammed down over my eyes at night because it was freezing cold, and I had my hat crammed over my eyes during the day to keep the sun off. And you don't have any vanity after the first half a day. You have no vanity. Just it's the hard work of. Well, I was allowed a chair. I think in deference to my advanced age, I was allowed a chair to sit on. But sleeping on the ground is hard work, and dealing with getting up in the middle of the night to go to the loo, all this kind of stuff is hard work. I think the Buddhists say before enlightenment, hew wood and draw water, and after enlightenment, hew wood and draw water. So I think spiritual life is just as hard work as physical life.
Yeah.
And it was also emotionally very hard work as well.
Mm.
But one of the things that I think was most wonderful was being able to step away from living with time, because we weren't allowed any kind of clocks or watches or but because I've got Parkinson's and I have to take my medication very strictly, I was allowed a small clock. But I realized that I didn't have to have the clock. I made myself a sundial. And because I was waking just at sunrise every day, and that's at 7 o'clock, which is when I take the first pills, then it was easy enough to figure out midday because the sun was overhead, and then 5 o'clock I put another stone in place, and I watched the shadow of the sundial moving, and it moved in this beautiful sort of arabesque, a kind of lovely oval shape. I'd somehow thought that it would go in a straight line, but it didn't. So being able to step out of clock watching,
Yeah,
being able to go from Chronos time, which is very much hours and minutes, into Kairos time, which just expands. So that was very special.
so did that, I suppose, that sense of time disappearing for you, that it was, you didn't have to watch the clock and be anywhere in a particular time, was it easy or difficult, I suppose, to kind of have a sense of how many days you were there? Did the time, did it feel like a long time on your own, or was every day different, I suppose?
Well, it was one of these things where it feels that it's been going on for always and forever. And then when it finishes, it's shocking. It feels like it's been just the blink of an eye. So it's the time just expanded and contracted, and it was like swimming. I was swimming in time. It's wonderful.
So, and what on a daily basis then did you had you had your guide, you had Wind Eagle then who came, was it Wind Eagle herself who came to make sure that you were okay, or was there someone else that supported you and asked your?
Well, every evening one of the helpers would bring a large bottle of water and a little tuk-tuk tin, as it were, of food. And that was, I had to manage that manage that for when I wanted to eat, or I think I was allowed a little bit more to eat than some of the other people who were also doing it in parallel with me. I'm just beginning to sound a bit pushy, but
a chair, more food, absolutely.
I know, shocking, isn't it? And then Wind Eagle would come and sit with me for probably about 20 minutes every day. And sometimes we sat in silence for a long time, sometimes we would talk. And she would give me the task that I was starting from. And the task that she gave me to begin with was to think of my life in terms of a garden. But I'm not a terribly good gardener, and metaphorically, I got cross. I thought, metaphorically built wonderful gardens over my life that people come and they, you know, enjoy it, and they never weed, and they criticize, and I'm fed up with gardens. I'd written Vision Quest, My Life as a Garden, on the front of my journal, but then I thought, no, and I was getting crosser and crosser, and I was sat in my chair and I dozed off under a tree. And I'll tell you about the tree in a minute.
Yep.
And as I dozed off, the tree nudged me. I thought of, you know, and I woke up with a jolt, and the word wilding went through my head. So I got my notebook and I scored out gardens, and I wrote Vision Quest Wilding. And that was where it all started. I had no idea what wilding was. I just knew that this was something very special. And when I spoke to Wind Eagle about it, and we started exploring.
So you talked about the tree, because we're going to talk about more about wilding in a little minute, but I want to know about this grandmother tree, because the grandmother tree became very special during this journey.
Yes,
and you talk about her speaking to you. That, you know, that's between the tree and the mountain. You know, kind of like having these conversations with you. So, you know, can you describe how that comes around, and how did you communicate with them?
Well, I suppose I have no idea. It wasn't as if I heard voices. It's back to the little voice in the head. I was introduced to Grandmother Tree by Wind Eagle. She said, come and meet this extraordinary pine tree, a pinyon pine. And Grandmother Tree was growing in the center of the space that I was given for my Vision Quest, because in a Vision Quest, you stay still in a bounded space. Sometimes you get a very small space. I was fortunate, I got a space that was about 12 paces in one direction and 10 paces in another direction. And Grandmother Tree grew in the middle of it. So I found that, you know, being completely on my own for so long, apart from just that 20 minutes or so a day with Wind Eagle, you start chatting to anything and anyone that's around, and Grandmother Tree was there, and she was just wonderful. And across the way that the land lies, across the plain below where I had my site, and at the far side there was this extraordinary mountain called Pedernal, which is a sacred mountain. And when Wind Eagle was taking me to my site, she said, Pedernal has particularly asked that you have your quest site in this particular space. She wants to be able to see you and to talk to you. And I just burst out crying, because it was just such an extraordinary thing to be told that the mountain had requested my company for the best part of a week. So, yes.
That mountain recognized the wonderful woman that you are.
Well, the mountain told me off for being Scottish, I suppose. That whole thing about you know, tall poppy syndrome and stuff.
Yeah.
Pedernal said to me, "You're a remarkable woman, and it's about time you actually started acting on that and believing it." And so, yes. And here we are 3 years later.
She was so right. She was absolutely so right. To that idea of, you know, like you said, we do make ourselves small, and maybe some cultures more than others. Women often, because we perhaps put the we put others before ourselves and their needs before our own. And what's been lovely kind of working with you, Alison, and getting to kind of read the stories that you told and follow your journey, is then that you started to emerge yourself. And I think that's what happened, that this trying to delve into what was wilding really saw you emerge.
Oh, yes, yes. And also through the extraordinary conversations that I've had with all the wilding women who've contributed their stories to the book. Because I realized when I started writing it that although my own experience is deep, it's not terribly broad. And I approached a couple of women friends and said, you know, this thing about when your life just shifts? And they said, yes. So I said, could you write 500 words or so about that? And they did. And these stories were just wonderful. I said, can I put them in the book? And they very generously said yes. And so I started asking more and more women if they would write something for the book, and they did. And the richness of those stories really, I feel, contributes hugely to the book. My story is a sort of thread that holds it all together, and then there's weave round it in this beautiful way.
And in a minute or two, we're going to have a couple of those lovely women to kind of come and join us. But before we get there, I'd like us to delve a little bit more for the audience and tease them a little bit more, because we want them to know about this book. They want to, for those who haven't got it yet, then, Nikki's going to put the link up as well so that you can go and buy it. But what I wanted to tease out is, I suppose, a little bit more about wilding and how then it unfolded for yourself to what it really meant, and and I suppose it's still evolving, as we've said. But how would you describe it to someone who now asks, well, what is wilding?
Well, it's one of these things that I think more than anything else, it's an attitude of mind. It's, for me anyway, I mean, I could only speak for myself about how I experience it. It's that moment when, it's the moment when I realize that the pressures of society have been working on me for all these 70 odd years. And I think, no, I'm going to challenge that and do it differently. I don't have to do what I've always done. So
yeah. So that's stepping out, you say, so it's a bit of stepping out of the expectations that everyone else has of us. Yes. And really delving into who we are and honoring ourselves, but also that way of sharing that. From my perspective, I've seen it, you share that with the wider community, because what you want is everyone to rise. It's that collaborative through that we all rise.
Yes, I mean, much more than, did you say survive?
No, I said just to thrive and to rise.
Thrive, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember Wind Eagle saying to me once, years ago, you've been a victim and you've learned how to survive it. You've been a survivor and you've learned how to thrive. And now you've got to learn how to shine. And I think it's that jump between survival and thriving and then shining. And I think that for me, wilding is, I mean, I've just written a book about it. I really ought to know.
That's somebody to tell her that you have to get everybody. You have to go and buy the book and read it to really understand what it is what it is. Yeah, because the concept it's a and it can be a concept, I suppose, for everyone to explore in their own way. Yeah,
well, I think so, and I think that the wilding women who are here on in this wonderful meeting, this wonderful party, will all have their own particular version of it. I know that for me, it's when I listen to the voice. It's when I listen to, one of the things that I write about in the book is where one of the tasks that Wind Eagle gave me was to identify all the things in the past that have held me back, all the things that have stopped me from, or where I have stopped myself, things like guilt, picking up other people's guilt. I used to walk around with this big rucksack, metaphorically, on my back, picking up my own guilt and picking up other people's guilt and shoving these rocks into my rucksack. And I mean, when I came to look at this on my vision quest, I was quite pleased that I'd actually learned not only to deal with my own bits of guilt and get them out of the rucksack, but also to realize that other people's guilt wasn't mine. So I could take those rocks out of my rucksack and say, no, 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 that's yours. I had to do, one of the things I had to look at for me was always a sort of balance between always say yes, because you never know where it might lead, and also saying yes to the wrong things, so too much. One of Wind Eagle's things is, if you're not sure whether you should pick something up or not, whether you should do something, you ask yourself two questions. First of all, does it grow corn? So is it going to be nourishing for me and for other people? And if the answer is yes, then the next question is it mine to do? So does it grow corn, and is it mine to do? Now, very often that second question, the answer for me is no, it's not mine to do. Other people can do it. Someone else can do it just as well, if not better than me. And if I try and do it because I just want to be helpful, then the chances are that I'll make a mess of it, or that I'll not finish it off properly, and it'll get messy. So yes, wilding is about knowing what's mine and what isn't mine. So
it's been a fascinating exploration, I think, of that whole idea. And we've got lots of comments coming up. That's it, just people saying it being the best version of ourselves.
yes.
Someone saying as a former Catholic, all too aware with the rucksack of guilt. So and loving the idea of that, that's that guilt rocks, but you don't have to pick them up. Exactly, that's it. And when I think that's the beauty of you being able to share your journey, allows us all to then explore for ourselves and start to to recognize that we all have probably done that to a degree, and the more that we can step into who we truly are, like you say, does it grow corn, is it for me, then the more we get an opportunity to blossom, then, like you say, to shine and shine our light out there in the world, for all to see. And you're doing a great job with that, I think, Alison, a wonderful job with that. Before we pick up into the Wilding Women, so get ready, the two ladies that I'm going to invite on to come. I wanted to talk to you about your piece of art that's behind you there.
Well,
can we talk a little bit about that? Is that okay?
One of the things that happened on this vision quest, and also on the previous ones I did, was Wind Eagle gave me a piece of leather to record everything on, that I was record my journey on, as it were. And when I'd come up with this thing about wilding and was trying to make sense of it, because I'm an artist, the first thing I do if I don't understand something is to try and draw it. So I decided I would draw a grandmother tree, and I stood with my back to the trunk, and I looked up into the branches, and I started drawing the branches, and then I would move around just a little bit and draw the next branches and move around a little bit. And as I drew, I realized that the tree had three concentric circles. So in the center, I think you probably just see it.
Yep.
That you can see the branches going out. In the center where the trunk and the main branches came off. It's again, this voice came through my head saying, that's the core of me. That's my being. And then the next circle was my loving, who I love, what I love. And then the final circle was my doing. And I started, Wind Eagle had brought inks and pens, and I had also brought, I had a feeling that I might be working on leather. So I brought some leather needles and some threads and some silks with me. And it's extraordinary because the leather dictated to me what I should do. It was one of these things where if I started getting arty with it or designery, it would go wrong. And I would have to stop and unpick what I had done or make it into something else because it told me what it needed. So the shapes round the outside of it are all the shadows that were cast by the moon. There was a full moon for the first 2 or 3 days that I was there. And the moon was so strong, and all the shadows just merged into one inky black set of shapes. And as I did it, I realized that these were other women. These shapes were, that's where the whole community of wilding women actually started. So
now you have this wonderful piece of art that really describes and and is that vision of the quest, I suppose. We can actually see the vision of the quest
yes.
that you went through, by looking at that, which is fabulous.
And one of the lovely things about it is that on it there are some beautiful jet beads that belong to my grandmother, and I'd kept hold of them for 50, 60 years, and I never knew what I was going to do with them. I'd almost given them away a couple of times, but again, the little voice said, no, hang on to them. And there they are, there's my grandmother on grandmother tree. So it's lovely.
Which is amazing. So I think now I'd like to sort of move on to talk a little bit more about the wilding women community and how all that developed, because it's been really important to you to bring women together and try to explore what you were what your experience and to take it further. How did it emerge? How did it start?
Well, when the women who were writing the stories and sending them in to me, I said, would you like to meet the other women? Because we were sharing the stories anonymously. And they all said, yes, I'd love to meet them. So we've set up some Zooms, and we started meeting up once a month or once every 3 weeks or so. And it just developed from there. The conversations took on a most extraordinary life of their own. And we've kept notes of all the conversations, and I'm rather hoping that those notes might develop into the next book.
Well, that would be lovely.
But that's something that with the community and I have to discuss, and how does that work? And
yep.
But just the lovely thing about the conversations is that friendships have grown out of them as well. So, and I think that's very important too.
So we're actually going to get to meet a couple of the ladies who've been part of your community. So we have Karen, who's in France. So if I'm just going to hopefully try and pin you onto the, here we go, I'm going to add pin, here we are, here's Karen. And if
Hello, everybody.
Find Sue Young. There's so many people on here. Here we are, I can see you now. Right, there we go. I'm going to add pin, here we are, and we've got Sue Young as well. And if you want just to unmute yourself then, Sue Young, and we can just have a, so thank you ladies. So Karen, you're in France.
Yes, I'm actually living in Burgundy, and I've got the big chance to be in the countryside, and there's a forest all around, and fields and cows, and it's just great. So when I met Alison on Zoom, I was also here, and I had this incredible opportunity to go walking 1 hour a day around my village, and it was just great to go and to dance in between the trees. So that was those videos I was making was part of my 1 minute 59 for the project, this dance project, when we met. That's how we met.
That's how you met. So, and Sue Young, lovely to have you here as well. And you are across the other side of the pond, and you're in the US of A.
Yes, I'm on the Northern California coast. We are being hit with wilding storms that are just really changing the coastline, destroying some of it. And I think that's a part of the wilding nature, is learning to destroy, let go, as well as, reclaiming what is, necessary and powerful.
Yeah. So, I mean, wow, that's a really poignant moment, I think, for us to actually reflect on, because it happens so often, and we can get really angry and upset about things that are happening like that, and perhaps that's another way of exploring and looking at that sort of situation. So can I ask you both then, I suppose Karen, first of all, what has it been like then to explore this concept of wilding and be part of this community?
Well, the wilding process was it was not really, for me, it was not like wilding. I think that I always kept a wild part inside of me from my childhood, and I always had the precious moments for myself during following my own path. So being part of the community was something just natural for me. When Alison asked, well, it was a moment of change in your life. So I had several, but it doesn't mean that I really needed to become white again because the society should just put me in jail. I've always been dancing and drawing and living the way I wanted, and quitting Paris to come to the countryside with my boss saying, "What are you going to do there?" And I said, "Well, I don't know yet. I'm just in love. I go, ciao." And so doing the things I wanted to do, and without knowing what will be the next second, as you said, Alison. So the part to be just, and to love the unknown. I really love the unknown. It's really like, I look at the sky and I say, wow, how many stars, and it's just fabulous for me. And dance improvisation gives me this strength to be able to adapt in any second to anything at any moment. So it's really part of my path.
Which is lovely to hear, so lovely to hear. Thank you for sharing that. And so Sue Young, what has it been like for you to be sort of part of this wilding community, and what's uncovered for yourself? What have you learned?
Oh my gosh, it's been like, it's such a salvation in so many ways. I think we have this wilding nature as children, and I've met a lot of people, especially later in life, who have, excuse my language, the fuck it's, where they're just like, fuck it, I'm going to do what I want. There's not a gap between that voice that Alison talked about and then following it. And I think I see that in children especially. I have a young son and an older son, and I marvel over that. But I think there's sometimes some regret because there's all the ways that I don't follow that, all the ways that I'm not in tune enough with the wilding to actually follow through with action, not just feeling the stirring. And so being part of this group, oh my gosh, it's been transformational just to be reminded of all the different ways that we have wilding and the importance of it kind of in our daily lives. It's like a little flame, like getting merged with all these larger flames, and all the flames are different colors and shapes, and they really inspire and kind of roll with each other. So I'm so grateful for this community that we've created together.
And Alison, can I ask you then, when you were sitting in your little tent in New Mexico, could you have imagined then that you would have pulled all these wonderful women and towards this community and really to be developing it?
No. I mean, it's just been the most extraordinary, loving, challenging experience, because each of these extraordinary women has got their own wonderful perspective and contributing to the conversations, contributing. I've learned so much, and learned by being challenged, learned by being people saying, hang on a minute, what do you mean by that? People saying, yes, I really agree with that bit, but let's explore another bit. So it's not cozy. Wilding women conversations are not cozy. They're deep, and they're loving, and they're yes, they're just very special. I mean, I noticed that one of the questions that's come up was why choose the word selfhood, and that's something that emerged from everyone in the conversations. And I think the community has taught me how to value my selfhood. I'm not even, again, this is one of these words that I'm not quite sure what we all mean by it. And it means something different for each person, which, yes. So
what comes across from me, just having the joy of being able to help you turn everybody's words and all your stories into this book, is that what you I think have absolutely created is an opportunity for people to really be themselves and to be seen and to explore and open up honestly, as you've said, with each other, that helps each of you then just rise and develop. And it's absolutely beautiful. And I absolutely commend you, Alison, on your desire to spread this further. That's the thing, that this is just the start of what you're doing. This is just...
yes. Yes, I mean, when I came to Indie Authors World first about this, and you said, well, what do you want the book to do? And I said, I want it to reach people, reach women all over the world, and to just, I'm running out of words here.
Yeah, that's the thing, just to touch that and open up that spark. I think that's the thing that we've spoken about, opening up the spark.
Yeah. And I see that Wind Eagle is in the group now.
She is, and I just wanted to, so I'm going to actually invite her to come in, because I know that you so want to have a chance to encourage her to share a little bit. So can I say thank you to Karen and to Sue Young so much for coming along and sharing a little bit of your story. Sorry we don't have longer. We could have had a long time to chat, but I will unpin you. So if you actually feel the pin be removed, then you'll go back to There we are. And if you can mute yourselves again, that would be great. And I'm looking now to find if we can actually come and add Wind Eagle. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming to join. I'm so delighted I get to say hello to this wonderful person that I've heard so much about. Alison speaks so highly of you. So, you know, I mean, I think the thing is, I would just say, I think you must be encouraging everybody now who's going to read this book to want to go and do some sort of journey and some sort of vision quest. So hopefully we'll have a link direct to you to say, well, where can we come and explore this?
Thank you. I've been listening for a couple of minutes and just appreciating your holding and your questions and your holding of everything here. It's beautiful.
Alison, is there anything that you would like to explore just for a minute or so with Wind Eagle while she's here that you think maybe the audience need to hear? Because obviously you know and have experienced her working with her for a long time.
Well, I think I would love to hear from you what your impression is of the way in which working with you and doing a vision quest expands people's selves, expands their horizons, expands their life. What's your...
Just a little bit, there you go, quite a little question.
Thank you for that beautiful question. I just wanted to mention that your good friend Pam is here.
Alison, big hugs to you.
And she was on the same vision quest in a different place on the land. So it's a serendipity that she's here today.
It was a magical time for sure.
Yes.
So I think when we come to the Mother Earth, to the universe, with our deep yearning to quest, to see into, to heal, whatever it is that we are called to do, the universe responds. We become so gifted when we open to the universal wisdom, and also the deep messaging to our deepest questions. So it's a deeply, deeply precious and sacred experience. That's what I would say in a short.
Thank you so much. I would love to actually speak to you for a lot longer. I'm going to unpin you, so you'll take the pin out. Thank you so much for sharing that, and I'm so glad that you were able to come and join us this evening. So I'll just, there we go. Well, back there. So here, I said to you, Alison, an hour almost up already. The time just goes so quickly, and I know people have got some questions. But what I want to do, I'll have a little look through the questions, see if we can come back and ask, is I really would love you to read a section of your book, because I think there's so many people would be desperate to hear you read, if that is all right with you.
Well, I would love to. I'll read two little bits, one from halfway through the Vision Quest and one from the very end. And as I said, so I'll just read this. Being on the land like this for this length of time is very challenging. Not just the nighttime waking and the daytime heat, not just the dust and the sand or the lumpy, bumpy ground I'm sleeping on, which slopes gently downhill, leaving me bundled against the door of my tent and having to wriggle back up each time I wake, but the emotional work I'm doing during the day and processing overnight. Halfway through my quest, I wake, sobbing uncontrollably in the middle of the night, not knowing why, in exhaustion and despair, and then something shifts, and I find that there is no separation between me and the earth. The lumps and bumps of the ground, the inexorable slide downhill, are gone, and I am held in warmth and comfort and love. It's an extraordinary feeling. There is no separation between me and Mother Earth. I lie on her breast as my own newborn children lay on mine, and I sleep. When I wake just before sunrise and deeply refreshed, I tell Pedernal what happened. Look behind you, she says. And as I turn, I realize I have been cradled between her and Grandmother Tree. These two strong eternal women, the mountain and the tree, have held me gently and firmly when I most needed it. I finally understand that Mother Earth is just that, my mother. Not an abstract concept, but a living, breathing, conscious entity that wants so deeply, that yearns to live in harmony, peace, and balance with all the different parts of herself, all her children. The love and warmth that I felt from the earth as I lay there, the sheer relief, the security, the calm, is with me even now. And I start to understand how the earth feels. After the births of my 3 children, they were put gently on my breast as I lay exhausted, euphoric at the end of the labor, at the fact of a healthy child, at the overflow of love I felt for each of them, amazement and gratitude to my body, to those who had helped me, husband, midwives, and carers. The body of each child, though so very different from one another, fitted perfectly onto the curves and angles of mine, skin to skin, breath to breath, rising and falling, hearts beating in sympathy. The physicality of the moment, the visceral quality of my love for my child, is what I feel from the earth. Truly, Mother Earth holding me, newborn on her breast, Grandmother Tree helping. And then this is the last bit from the Vision Quest. At the end of the week, I pack up my campsite and observe one of the fundamental precepts of living with the land: leave no trace. I make sure there is nothing, no scrap of rubbish, obviously, but more than that, no footprint in the dust, no half-demolished stone altar, no guide stone or significant feather, nothing that indicates that any human has ever been in this place. I put all my camping gear into the one bag beyond the boundary of my site quest, and I find a bushy twig and walk backwards off the land, sweeping out my footsteps as I go. But first I say my goodbyes and thank yous to Pedernal, sacred mountain, and to Grandmother Tree. Pedernal is brusque. You know what to do, get on with it. And I say to Grandmother Tree, I shall miss you. Oh no, you won't, she replies, I'm coming with you. And so there she is, hanging in all her magnificence and glory, and the continuous reminder that this work, writing this book, discovering what is wilding, living it, and as the months progress, taking the wilding idea out into the world, is my work. It's mine to do. So packed up and leaving no trace, I come off the land and meet up with the other seekers. We share moments from our quests. I tell the gathering how Mother Earth held me on her breast and cradled me to sleep. Then we visit hot mineral springs to soak away the dust and the week's grime. Rupert Brooks, in his poem, The Great Lover, talks about the benison, the physical blessing of hot water. Oh yes, the place is quiet. People speak softly, voices muted, and under it all the sound of the water bubbling up as it has done for hundreds of thousands of years, flowing to the surface from its volcanic aquifers. The night falls and the stars come out. The pools steam gently. I lie held by the water, marveling at the stars and the generosity of the earth. Such gifts, I am in awe. I pay attention to each tiny detail, to the huge overarching pattern of life and to everything in between, to the pebbles underneath my bare feet and the red cliff towering above the pool I float in, to the tiny lights illuminating the pathways and the blaze of stars across the sky, to the feel of the hot water on my body and the cool of the night air on my face as the temperature drops towards zero again, to the smell of the minerals in the water, the iron, the arsenic, the soda, the lithia, and the tantalizing whiff of dinner drifting from the restaurant. I pay attention to the warmth of my feelings for my fellow seekers on the quest, our helpers, and for my guides. The next day I fly home. I barely need the plane.
That was awesome. Absolutely awesome. Thank you so much. A pleasure to hear you actually read that in your words. you speak it. So it's just been absolutely magical. Well, I think we've run a little bit over time. I hope that that everyone's been okay to stay a little bit. Thank you. Tanya's just put the link up. I was just going to ask Nikki to do that, just to say that there is a link for the Wilding Women website, and that Alison, you were saying you have your next meeting is on Saturday, the 28th of January at 5 p.m. UK GMT. So not, or maybe a GNT. That's what we might need next. So if anybody wants to kind of check out the website, it's in the chat there. It's wildingwomen.com, where you can find out lots more about the journey that that Alison has been on, and find out more about what magical book, and where you can see more behind the scenes around that. Wow. Yeah, lots of congratulations. Loved living to you. You know, lots of great feedback coming through on the chat there. I appreciate, Alison. It's been there's been a lot to kind of get through tonight. Just before we sort of wrap up, I know that you had a few people that you kind of wanted to thank, just for coming along. Is there anything you want to say before we kind of like invite people to kind of give you a little bit of a cheer and say congratulations?
I'm just so full of love and gratitude and appreciation to everyone who's turned up, and so full of love and gratitude and appreciation to the wonderful stories that people have contributed to the book, that makes it so much richer and deeper and better than it would otherwise have been. And
I think that's all you need to say. So sorry, did you?
And a special mention to Elspeth for doing the wonderful illustrations that have made the book so very special.
And we're going to
thank you, Alison. Thank you.
At some point, Elspeth, you and I are going to have a conversation and share out the little journey of how this all came about as well. So that would be lovely. So without further ado, could I invite you all to unmute yourselves, be prepared for a whole lot of noise that will all come at once. And we want to give Alison a huge big cheer and say congratulations for a wonderful book launch. And yep, that's it. Open your mics, folks.
Congratulations!
Well done.
You're amazing. You're amazing. Congratulations.